Yes, as you can probably see, if you look close enough, I've got a bit of a red rashy thing here on my neck, and people will probably say, geez, K-Man's got a disease. Well, that's not the case. All I'm doing is I'm treating a few skin cancers, which I do on an annual basis. Certain little cancers pop their little ugly head up, and I smash them on the head with a bit of a topical cancer cream, and that actually gets the body to fight them away and kill them. But the challenging thing is that I've been fighting over these cancer skin challenges for many, actually a couple of decades now. Now, what I do know is this little skin cancer which has come up here, and it's not fatal, it's just a minor thing, but I want to stay on top of it before it gets on top of me. But the challenge is that didn't come from yesterday's exposure to the sun. The skin cancers that I'm experiencing now in my 50s came from way back many decades ago, from when I was growing up in the 70s and 80s. And there's a number of reasons why I'm fighting some skin cancers at the moment. Is number one is I was brought up in the beautiful paradise of New Guinea, which is on the equator, and the beaches of Queensland. So I was brought up in the tropics. I was brought up in the harshest conditions of the sun, which I love, by the way, but having my Irish pasty skin is probably not conducive to that type of exposure. But that's where I was brought up. The second reason is I was also brought up in the 70s and the 80s. In the 70s and the 80s, getting a tan was cool. And yes, so therefore when you're 16 or 17, or you got to get a tan, and you put the baby all over you and you go, oh, I'm a tan man. And that was a thing back in those days. So I got extra exposure to the sun by exaggerating it, by exposing myself too much time to the sun. And the third reason is that I also used to play cricket as a young kid, and therefore I spent all day out in the field exposed to the sun. Now, I guess you're saying, what is the point? Well, the point being is that all happened many decades ago, and I didn't have the skin cancer again back then. I'm getting it now. So I guess the point being is the cancer you get today is as a consequence of what you did many decades ago. And the same applies to your body. If I go through some of the injuries that I have, I've got plantar fasciitis at the moment I'm fighting, I've got osteitis in the right foot, I've had patellofemoral syndrome, I've sacroiliac inflammation in the in my lower back. I've got bicep tendonitis in both arms. I've got medial epicondylitis, lateral epicondylitis. I have iliopsoas tendonitis in the hip flexors. I've had a subluxal right shoulder, and I've had shoulder tendonitis in the left shoulder. So there's a handful of injuries that I'm always combating at any particular time. And a lot of those injuries wasn't from what I did yesterday. They were what I was doing many decades ago when I was in my teenagers, when I was 20s, when I thought I was bulletproof, and I used to overtrain. I used to do silly exercises. I do biomechanically not sound exercises, things that put stress on the joints. And now I'm starting to pay the consequence for what I did then. So a little bit of sun exposure is really good, and it releases the vitamin D in your body, and it's really good for your skin. But too much exposure, too much intensity, too much volume is going to have a consequence in form of skin cancers. Same with the body. It's great if you go and do all these dramatic exercises which you see going around now, and you're going to go in the gym and lift weights 5 times a week, and that's fine. But in 10-20 years time, you will pay this consequence by suffering from osteoarthritis or tendonitis or tendinopathy or muscular tears, or all those itises that the body tends to experience later in the life as a consequence of what you did early in your life. Remember, the lung cancer you got today is not from the cigarette you smoked from yesterday. If you're smoking now and you're smoking in your 20s, yes, what you're doing is maximizing your chance of getting lung cancer in your 40s and 50s. It's not like you smoke a cigarette today and you get cancer tomorrow. There's a delayed effect. So just be wary, even though your intent might be good to go and do some strength training or do some high intense cardio training and stuff like that, make sure that you control the exposure, the intensity and the volume, and most importantly, you get plenty of recovery, so that way you're not going to be suffering the consequences when you get to my old ripe age of wisdom in my 50s. And I started getting a lot of these injuries in my 40s. I started getting the skin challenges in my 40s, the joint challenges in my 40s, and I thought, that's where they came from. It was what I was doing in my 20s that now I'm paying the price for, and now I have to manage it. And I don't want that for you. And if you're a fitness professional, you definitely don't want that for your clients. So when you're working with your clients, think of the long-term effects or consequences of what you're doing to them, even though you may have the right intent, and that would be no cow poo.